Hey guys, it's Sam, and this is my spooky season TBR. So I'm a mood reader, like many of you are. I'm not as extreme of a mood reader as some people though, where some people are like, I could never plan the next book I'm gonna read. I'm like, I always kind of know the next book I'm gonna read when I'm reading the current book I'm reading. But I might not plan super far in advance. However, the exception to this is spooky season. I read, or I plan to read, all of my spooky season books within spooky season. Now, longtime viewers will know, spooky season books for me are not horror novels. They are spooky adjacent, atmospheric, gothic, that kind of vibe, stuff with witches. Now in past years, tragically, I always forget that I should start spooky season in September, so this time I'm doing that. Now I have about 15 books here, which I should be able to do. The little small kerfuffle is that I am going to Scotland, the UK, on the 20th of October, so that little gap, I don't know if I'll get some of those read, so I might save some of the ones that I'm not as pumped for. I mean, I'm pumped for all of these, but ones I'm a little bit more not sure for the end of October. But all of these are books that are spooky adjacent. I'm starting in September. This does not include the books that I talked about in Shift-a-thon, so that is going to be the end of September. So add on to that. I should be able to do this if I read at my normal pace, but I don't know if I will or not. So let's see. These are also in no particular order as far as the order I'm reading them in, so I still get to be very mood ready based on that. So first we have a reread, Lyrial by Garth Nix. This is the second book in the Aporson series. This is a series that is a fantasy series, takes place in a world where there are necromancers that can control the dead. And the Aporsons are the people that need to send dead back into death. So there's almost like a River Styx situation. They have bells that can control the dead. I have a tattoo coming up that's gonna be one of the bells from this series, so I really want to reread it. I might reread it on audio because Tim Curry does the audiobooks, so we'll see. But I haven't read Lyrial at all since I read it in high school, so over 15 years ago. So we'll see how I feel about this one. I didn't love this as much as Sabriel, which I've reread 3 or 4 times since then, so I've never reread this, but I should, and I need to. Next is the opposite of a reread, and that is None of the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. I've had this arc and I should have read it sooner, but it's a spooky season book, and I always read these books in spooky season. I pretty much always read a Locktoon book since they've been coming out in October. So I'm excited to get to this. Spooky bone stuff, spooky weird bone stuff, lesbian necromancers in space. The last book was a total mindfuck. Let's see what this one brings. Then we have another really anticipated release for me, and that is Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reed. This is a standalone adult fantasy gothic horror retelling of the fairy tale or the myth, the Juniper tree. I know nothing about that, but people say this one's very dark. I think this has some body horror elements. You guys know I love body horror as a horror adjacent thing, so I'm really excited about this. Next we have the book that I think, it's not done yet, the poll, I don't think, but my Patreon supporters are voting on it, and I think this is going to be the book that's going to win for September. That is Under the Whispering Door by TJ Clune. This is a standalone fantasy, but he tends to write sort of contemporary fantasy, so it follows a reaper, a grim reaper, and a ghost, and they fall in love, and it's gay. So I am very excited for this. Whimsical, cute. So this should fit right in with the season. Then we have 2 graphic novels from the same series. These are books that I wanted to get read before the end of the year, so this is contributing to that. And that is Monstrous Volumes 4 and 5. This is a sort of a body horror, eldritch horror-y, cosmic horror graphic novel series, very feminist, female leading, has Japanese folklore and mythology mixed in. There's a lot going on here, but it's kind of spooky. It's a little scary, but then again, a body horror scary way, which I can totally handle. Then we have a classic that I have never read. This will contribute to one of the reading challenge prompts for the Patreon readathon that I do. It's a yearly reading challenge, not readathon, and this will fit one of the prompts for Read a Classic, and that is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. My English class did not read Frankenstein because we were honors, and so we read, I believe it was called The Pope, or the Monk, or something, which is another sort of gothic horror, Lolita adjacent almost story. So we didn't read Frankenstein, so I've never read Frankenstein, and it's time. I've also owned this Vintage Classics edition for a very long time. I bought a bunch of or I was gifted a bunch of the Vintage Classics editions in 2015, and here we are. Then we have Bone Criers Dawn by Catherine Purdy. This is the second book in the Bone Criers Moon series. It's a duology, and it is a YA series that I'm responsible on for the first book, and I want to finish the series up. But one of our main characters is a bone crier, essentially uses sort of almost bone magic. I think there's death magic stuff going on, stuff with the moon. And then the other character's mother or father, I think it was mother, was murdered by a like bone crier, and so he has a vengeance quest, but then these two fall in love. And then this is obviously the second book in the series. I've owned this for a while, so I just want to wrap it up. Another second book in the series that I'm very excited about is This Wicked Fate by Kaelyn Bayron. This is the second book in this duology that this Poison Heart follows the main character who is a like nature witch, comes from a line of witches, doesn't realize it because she was adopted. Then her birth mother and I think like her aunt die, leave her the family home. She discovers their ties to Greek mythology, poison stuff, and she has a sapphic romance with a woman who's like maybe some kind of supernatural creature. Perfect spooky season adjacent. That is YA as well, if I didn't mention that. Then we have A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This is a sort of retelling of Dracula, or like Dracula from the perspective of Dracula's wives, and like them fighting back against their abuser, essentially. Vampire books, we love to see it. Vampires, witches, dead things. That is the theme. Speaking of witches, more witches. These are books that have been on my shelf for a while, and it's witches, so I have to read it for spooky season. We have Witches Steeped in Gold by Sienna and Smart. And this is about two witches in this fantasy world who team up. They're sworn enemies, but they need to take down a like threat to the whole island nation. So, are they gonna be in love? Maybe. Then we have The Once and Future Witches by Alex C. Harrow. This is one that I've put off a lot because I didn't love her first book, and then I read a novella by her and it's been just like fine. So I don't know. And I've had really mixed opinions about this, where some people are like, I think you're gonna love it. Some people are like, I don't think you're gonna like it. I don't know. I don't know if it's gonna be enough fantasy for me. I like my witch books to be like very heavy on the magic. I don't know how this is gonna be, but I do think I'm gonna read the audiobook of this. And this is Suffragette Witches, essentially. So this has potential. I just don't know. Then I have a book for the seasonal book club for the Patreon. So every season we read a book together, and there's gonna be a live show at the end of the season. This will be one I'll definitely read in September, and then there'll be another pick for the last season of the year, so last quarter. And that is The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. This is the first book in a trilogy. I think it's gonna be, possibly a series, duology. I think it's at least a trilogy. I don't know. I'm just here to vibe, man. But this is an adult fantasy, and our main character has bone shard magic. I believe that she has to take down like someone, like she's the emperor's daughter, blah, blah, blah. But she has bone shard magic. Bone magic, necromancy stuff. That's Halloween adjacent. Then for another book club, guys, there's so many books for spooky season. For the House Salt book club for October, we're going to be reading The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. So this is a standalone sort of retelling of the Dr. Moreau, I believe, story, which is like a gothic horror story that's a classic, and this is following the daughter. Then we have Saint Death's Daughter by C.S.E. Cooney. This follows more necromancers. The main character has a revenant best friend called Goody Graves, and they are attached to the house that they live in. They're about to like lose the house, and so to save the revenant and like save sort of like their family name, they have to sort of do stuff. But the goddess of death is also on their side. So death stuff, ghosts, bone stuff, necromancy, has everything. And lastly, we have The Last Graduate by Naomi Novik. This is a second book in the Scholomance series. Again, spooky adjacent. This is a magical sort of high school that is essentially trying to eat all of the kids. Very dark academia, gothic, with lots of creatures and things. And this is a second book. In the first book, they're basically trying to make it until graduation. Graduation is when they have to fight their way out of the school. So I think that's when that's gonna happen. So spooky season. And that is all. I know I did that very quickly, but you know, for a TBR, I don't want to necessarily go into all these books because you're gonna hear about all of them when I read all of them, hopefully, in the next 2 months. Hopefully. It's a lot of books, but we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. There's so many spooky books. And then like most of my, again, spooky adjacent books are then off my TBR for now. Some of these have been on my TBR for a while. Some of them are more new. So I like to read a lot of these during spooky season. So yeah, comment below. Let me know if there's any of these that you really think I should prioritize that I'll really love. Any of these that you plan on reading during spooky season as well. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.